Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Eerie Side Podcast with your hosts, Sophia,
Dee, and Elena.
We appreciate you guys listening, and we hope you're ready to get on the Eerie Side. Okay, we just want to take a moment to really thank everyone and give a shout out to all our listeners in the U.S. and Canada. We have a lot. And we also have noticed we have quite a lot from the Philippines specifically. Thank you so much if you're supporting us in the Philippines. We were definitely not expecting all of that support. And from Asia, Australia, Europe, South Africa, and Argentina, just to name a few of the areas where we have our largest listener base. So thank you so much to all of you. We would love to, and we are going to cover a story from your countries. So if you have a particular true crime story that you would like us to cover, please share that in the text description below our podcast. I know on Spotify you can, write something, and I'm not sure if you can do it on Apple Podcasts, but you can definitely do it on Spotify. So you can just drop a suggestion, and then we will be more than happy to cover your true crime case that you're interested in. So thank you, everyone. Okay, now to get to the story we have today, the case I'm talking about today is just absolutely heartbreaking. And I know, Mom and Elena, you don't have the title of the story, and I'm going to keep that private from you guys because I don't want to give anything away. But it's about Gaylin Rose and, what really happened to her and her family. It's beyond devastating. I don't have the words to emphasize just how much of an injustice it is. It makes me really angry just thinking about it. And I want to warn everyone right now that there are some very heavy themes of racism. So if you're not in a place to hear that right now, I just wanted to let you know. Okay. So in 2016, Gaylin Rose was a 29-year-old mother to 4 daughters. Her daughters were named Keyana Davis, who was 11, Keyara Phillips, who was 9, Kerrielle McDonald, who was 7, and Kionnie Welxh, who was 5. Keyana, the oldest, loved basketball. Her grandfather, Tracy Rose, said that Keyana was going to be a superstar in basketball. Keyana was very smart. She wanted to go to school every day, and she loved to be outside. Keyara, who was 9, was described as being always herself and was just a very special girl. She was more of a homebody that preferred to stay in the house. And all of the girls, actually, all 4 of them were cheerleaders. They had these cute purple cheerleading outfits, and they're adorable. I'll show you guys some pictures. Their mom, Gaylin, also joked with the laugh that all of them did not listen. She said sometimes they listened and sometimes they did not. But all 5 of them were just a really tight-knit family since they all had each other. Now, Gaylin and her girls lived in a city called Flora, which is in Indiana. They had moved from Jefferson City, Missouri, which is where they were born and had grown up. And then they moved from there to Flora to be closer to family, since that is where Gaylin's father lived. And also, Gaylin just needed something different. She was looking for a change. However, Gaylin described the energy upon arriving in Flora as just being very different. She spoke to iTeam 8 when describing what her life was like with her girls in Flora, and she said, "It was totally different than Jefferson City. I worked in the Marathon, the gas station. Every day, I would have a gentleman come in there and throw change at me because he wanted coffee. The energy shifted." Now, I want to mention that Gaylin and her daughters are Black. And to me, the way I interpret this, and I know also because Gaylin has made other comments in an interview, is that she thinks that her Blackness makes a difference when it came to the treatment she experienced in Flora. And I would have to agree. I wasn't able to find more details on what other prejudices she experienced in Flora before, what I'm going to talk about today. But it seems like she felt a really big difference than what she experienced in Jefferson City. And I will say that Flora, Indiana is a rural small town with only about 2,100 people in it. 89% of the demographic is white and 6% is black. 2% is Hispanic and 2% is up to or more racist. So, you know, it's.
I have a question. So, she moved from Gainesville, right? No, where did she move from?
Jefferson City, Missouri.
And she okay, wait. She
moved from Jefferson City, Missouri to Flora, Indiana.
Okay, where did I get Gainesville from?
I think Gainesville's from a different case. I'm pretty sure that's from Susan Woods, right? Or no? Or
no, that's is that really Nick?
I was like, wrong case.
Okay, wait. So she moved from. She's still in Indiana, though, right?
Yeah. Right now,
okay.
Like where we're at right now, she's in Flora, Indiana.
But she moved from
She moved from Jefferson City.
Okay,
Missouri.
and that's also that. Oh, that's in Missouri.
Yeah. That's in Missouri.
Okay. So they were in Missouri, then they went to Indiana. Okay.
Yeah. Now, 89% of the demographic in Flora is white, like I said. So 6% is black. So it's a very white area. So with that, what are you both thinking right now after everything I told you?
Well, I mean, what year is this?
This was in 2016.
Okay, well, that's
yeah, so like almost 8 years ago. It would be like 8 years ago where we're going to get to in November.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely very shocking and disturbing that this is happening in 2016. I mean, it's like, and it's Indiana, like it's not.
What are you talking about? Indiana?
It's in the middle of the country.
It's Midwestern.
Yeah, I know, but that's
just rural Indiana too.
I know,
it's not like
but
they're in Indianapolis or anything like that.
I know, it's just like,
and 89% is white, so it's not a very diverse.
I mean, yeah,
area.
I guess Indiana is interesting, but
I know we feel like 2016. You know, we should be past that by now, but let's be honest. There's been a lot of injustices brought out then and recently about how much is going on to people who are minorities that shouldn't be.
True.
So,
where is Flora, Indiana, actually, if you look at it on the map? Is it further south?
That's a good question. Let me look that up.
This is just something that I would expect maybe like in the deep south, but at the same time, I'm not.
I have a feeling Flora is probably south Indiana,
That's what
which
I was
is
thinking,
very close.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just
close to Indianapolis, or where is it?
No, it's in the northern part of it. So it's actually northwest of Indianapolis. So it's like almost partway in between Chicago and Indianapolis.
Whoop whoop! Shout out to Chicago.
Okay.
That's where we're from. But it's just I don't know. It's very frustrating and disturbing and just outright disgusting.
Okay, so with that, so Gaylin is now living in Flora with her daughters, and her dad is also living in Flora. Her dad was named Tracy Rose, and Gaylin and her daughters lived with her dad, Tracy, for 8 months before they moved to an apartment that was a 2-story duplex. The first floor of this 2-story duplex had a large front porch, and according to their neighbors, the girls played on their front porch a lot, and they were often outside. Neighbors described Keyana, Keyara, Kerrielle, and Kionnie as being friendly and polite. One of their neighbors, Chastity Fox, said that they were the ones who had actually gotten her dog to play fetch, and that her dog had never played fetch until they taught it to. Another neighbor said that the girls were very playful, sweet, loving, and would do anything for anybody. So, you know, you could tell they were very sweet girls, they were animal lovers, and they were really liked by their neighbors. They had really good things to say about them, and their neighbors obviously thought very highly of the girls. And at this point, Gaylin has been in Flora for almost a year now, and her daughters were finally starting to feel settled and were making friends too. Gaylin and her daughters lived just a few blocks from Gaylin's father, Tracy. And on Friday, November 13th, 2016, Tracy was packing for a trip to Tennessee when he had a feeling that he shouldn't go out of town. But he didn't really know why. His granddaughters, who called him Paw Paw, came to help him pack, and they asked him not to go. Tracy thought this was strange that they asked him not to go, and I'm not sure why he thought that or if that's something they usually wouldn't do, but he found it strange at least, which is really sad when you know what happens next. So Tracy still went to Tennessee, and on Sunday, when he was in Tennessee, Keyana, the oldest, was playing in a basketball game, and Gaylin spoke with him on the phone in real time and gave him a play-by-play of the game. So you can tell he really cared about his granddaughters and that they were a close family.
Mm-hmm.
Then, on Sunday, November 20th, Gaylin puts her daughters to bed upstairs in their bunk beds, which is on the second story. And then Gaylin goes to bed in her room, which is on the first story. So that's the night of November 20th. Then, the next day in the morning, November 21st, 2016, at around 3 a.m., Gaylin is asleep, but all of a sudden, she said something out of nowhere just told her to get up. She rolled out of bed, and then when she went to the corner, not really sure which corner she's referring to, if it's like the corner of her room or the hallway or whatever, just when she went to the corner, she realized her entire house was on fire and immediately leapt into action. She tried to go up the stairs and try to save the girls, but the smoke and the flames prevented her from going through, and her attempts were futile. She couldn't breathe, couldn't talk, or say anything when she tried to go up and just communicate with them. That's how bad the smoke was.
So Gaylin actually was sleeping downstairs?
Yeah, her bedroom was on the first floor.
Oh, and the girls were upstairs?
Yeah, on the second floor.
Okay. So that's why she couldn't go up.
Yes.
So was the fire on the second floor, obviously?
It was on the second and the first floor.
Oh, it was both floors?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Once Gaylin realized she couldn't save the girls by herself in the house, she ran from the house to get help. At 3:34 a.m. is when the first 911 call comes in, which we will actually go into more detail later. There were a good amount of neighbors who were witnessing what was happening and who were also trying to help too. And the devastation of what was happening was shared amongst the neighbors that had gathered. Of course not on the same level as what Gaylin is experiencing, but the neighbors were horrified of the situation as well. One of the neighbors, Adam Ayers, crawled into the dining room to get to the stairs leading to the upstairs bedroom, but when he made it to the kitchen, he saw a 2-inch wide path of fire on the floor that led to the back porch area. No one said explicitly what this meant, but I'm making an assumption that this looked suspicious to him, like someone maybe created this path of fire to the back porch. Meanwhile...
Oh, so you're saying that it's like a very small, almost like... kind of like a line of fire?
Yeah, that's how it was described.
Okay, and like in general, fires
and it just goes in one line.
One
right?
thin line, right, which is what fires normally don't do. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that just probably looked very designated or very specific.
Right, like a trail of gasoline or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So meanwhile, Gaylin is outside and she's shouting to her daughters in the house who are also screaming back to her. At some point, Gaylin said, "I went from hearing them to not hearing them." Eventually, she was forced into an ambulance and she kept saying, "My babies, my babies." She was transported to a hospital. I've heard some accounts that say she was airlifted there, so I'm not sure if she was put in the ambulance temporarily and then airlifted, but I do know she eventually was taken to a hospital where she was put in a burn unit. She had burns to her body and damages to her eyes as well.
Jeez.
On her body, her skin was singed, her eyes had corneal burns, and she also had an inhalation injury from having smoke in her throat. She had to be intubated, so she really did do her best to try and get to her babies. I mean, she had all these injuries to her.
Yeah, that's just horrific. And I feel like burn injuries are just like probably one of the most excruciating things that you can like go through. I mean, I can't like speak for myself, but I can't imagine like the excruciating pain that like she must have felt during those moments.
You don't usually feel pain with burn injuries at the beginning.
Really?
Yeah, it takes a few hours before they start because you shinge your nerves and the pains are all gone. So it takes a couple hours before it kicks in. Yes, and then when it does kick in, hopefully by then you're in the hospital, so they've already started treating you. But that's when the pain really kicks in. So she probably wasn't feeling anything at first as she was trying to save the girls.
Right, and the adrenaline and everything.
Right.
But did she have like Did it say what kind of degree?
No, so it didn't say what kind of degree, so I'm assuming it's not, third or second degree. And if you see her, she doesn't look like she has, permanent damage. Now, maybe she does, and it just doesn't look that bad, and it healed really well. But I think it was more her skin was singed, versus, really deep burns.
Because I know, I think, is it third degree burns when you get them so bad that, the nerves are just, gone, you don't even feel it?
And that's only at the beginning for a while, then you do.
Oh, okay.
It's
even
not
with third degree?
Yeah, it takes a while, but it does kick in.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of time burn victims are put through a lot of pain medicine.
Right, and sometimes comas, right? Medical or
I think that just depends on the situation.
Oh, okay. Okay, anyway, sorry.
And so they couldn't get the girls to jump out of the windows, they weren't near the windows or anything.
That's what I was wondering, and it's still wonder. I mean, I was wondering the entire time I was researching this and writing this, and I still have questions about that. Nobody has mentioned at all that the girls were at the window and that anything about windows at all or about them being able to escape on their own. Nothing. So I don't know. If there was a window and they just weren't able to get out of it, I don't know. I still have questions about that.
Because if the fire department would, if it showed up, they could do something where they can get catch them and or a ladder or something to get them out. But I don't know if because I know you said the police were called, but I don't know if they were there at the.
Well, and we'll get into the fire department and their response and all of that too. And we can even talk more about this once we have all the information, but to this day I still do not know and understand what prevented them from being at the window to jump out, if at all, or what. I don't know why that wasn't an option. At least they don't talk about it at all.
Well, you don't even know if the windows could be open.
Yeah, that too.
Sometimes some of the windows are not working, so people, if she's renting it, and she was renting it, correct?
Yeah, she was renting it.
So you don't know the condition of it. Okay.
Yeah, so 2 officers, in addition to Gaylin, 2 officers were also injured. Carroll County Sheriff's Office Deputy Drew Yoder, one of the first on the scene, rushed into the home trying to rescue the girls. After multiple failed attempts, he was pulled out of the home by Flora police officer Josh Dissinger. Deputy Yoder suffered critical injuries and had smoke inhalation and was flown to the hospital where he was hooked to a ventilator for several days. So he also, really was affected by it, trying to save the girls. Officer Dissinger was treated and released as well. Unfortunately, nobody was able to save Gaylin's children, so all 4 of her beautiful daughters, 11-year-old Keyana Davis, 9-year-old Keyara Phillips, 7-year-old Kerrielle McDonald, and 5-year-old Kionnie Welxh perished in the fire.
Holy, oh my God.
I know. I can't, it's all 4 of them. It's it's just.
It's her whole world just taken away in one night.
Yeah. So, it's pretty, you have, no words for it. It's, so shocking. You have, your mind can't even, I feel like my mind can't even wrap my mind around it.
No, I know. I feel like I'm kind of, speechless right now.
I know. That's how, it's that shouldn't even happen. You hear about parents losing one child, but all of them, especially if there's 4 of them, it shouldn't even be something that's possible.
Right. It's just horrific.
Yeah, their official cause of death was asphyxiation. Their official cause of death was asphyxiation. Sorry.
You have a really hard time with this word.
I don't know why. Their official cause of death was asphyxiation and inhalation of carbon monoxide and soot. So, they did die by the smoke. In some ways, that's how people usually die in fires, but I'm glad they weren't burned to death, and hopefully that saved them from that. Gaylin called her father Tracy soon after the fire to tell him what had happened, and he was just as devastated. He called his granddaughters his girls and considered them to be his everything. Vigils were held and memorials were built outside the home, which became surrounded by stuffed animals, candles, and messages of love and support from the mourning community. At this point, we are now left with the devastating aftermath of the fire, which is that this mother has now lost all of her babies in one day. All of them are now dead. Now, I'm going to go into the timeline of events surrounding the fire in greater detail. At 3:34 a.m., 911 dispatchers received a call from Elizabeth Aries, who I'm assuming, I don't know for sure because it didn't explicitly say anywhere, is married to Adam Aries. They were neighbors to Gaylin and the girls. At 3:36 a.m. and 3:37 a.m., Officer Yoder goes into the house to try and save the girls, but isn't able to. And Officer Dissinger is also at the house the first time Yoder came, but he was talking to Gaylin to try and tell Yoder where to go in the house to save the girls, but it doesn't work. At 3:38 a.m., Officer Yoder drives 24 seconds to the Flora fire station because it's only a few blocks away. And he tells them there's people inside the burning house and that they need to come quick. And Officer Yoder was actually swearing at them too. My own opinion, it's just my own opinion after watching his dash cam, and you can actually see his dash cam from the entire night, is that he seems a little frustrated and panicked, obviously, since he wasn't able to get anywhere with his efforts to save the girls. And, that the actual fire truck isn't there yet either to help. Because the 911 call has come in at this point at least 4 minutes ago.
Wait, so the officer arrived at the house and then drove to the fire department.
Yeah, he tried saving the girls. He spent a few minutes trying to save the girls, wasn't able to. So then he got back in his car and drove to the fire department, which was a few blocks away.
Right, and they didn't want to...
No, it's not that they didn't want to. It's just that he told them, come on, let's go. There's people in the house.
Mm-hmm. And they, took their time, or did they get up and go, or?
They did come right after that.
Oh, okay.
But, the 911 call came in 4 minutes earlier, and they're only a few blocks away. It took them 24 seconds to drive there.
Okay.
Okay, so let me understand. At 3:41,
3:41, 3:34 is when the first 911 call came in.
3:34. So the first 911 call comes in.
Yes.
And the policeman gets there what time?
3:36.
So just 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's the time that he goes into the house.
And he tried to save him, and he couldn't. So at 3:38, he realizes that he can't do it, and he goes to the fire station to see where they're at.
Yes.
So in his mind, that the fire department hasn't arrived yet means something to him, because most policemen just wait for the fire department to come.
Right. That's an assumption that you're making and I'm making too.
There's nothing in there, he's never said anything.
He's never said anything. But, I'm making the assumption that he must have been again, an assumption. If he's going to drive there, I'm assuming he's thinking, where the heck are they?
Well, if
they're only 24 seconds away. And I watched it on the dash cam the entire time. It's 24 seconds. Very close. It even in 24 seconds, when I was watching it, I was like, is it really 24 seconds? Because it felt like 10 seconds. It's very, very close. And it is just 24 seconds away, a few blocks away. It's not far at all. And, at 3 a.m, there's no cars on the road. It's completely dead.
Well, they do have to get ready and get dressed, but it didn't sound like they even were at that point or getting in the truck, because he went there and told them, what is taking you guys so long and all that, right? Is that what's on the dash cam?
Yeah, you can hear him. I could actually get up his actual words, but he's just like, come on, guys, there's people in the house. Let's go.
Wow.
Right. So he obviously, because even if he went there the time he did and the phone call came, that's at least 4 minutes. He probably should have seen them getting ready or going in the truck or something. And it didn't seem like he observed that from the fire department.
And from the dash cam, I did not see that they were. I only saw the closed garage, and I think there was another garage that was open, but I didn't see anyone. And not to say that they weren't, I just didn't see anyone.
Usually, when they get the call, people are moving. It's like a go, go, go kind of pace.
Right. It does take them a second.
Right.
They got, especially if they were sleeping, they have to get up, put their clothes on, get the truck ready, and go. It does take some time, but I think the policeman would have gone in and seen they were getting ready. At least he would have said, instead of saying what's going on, he'd be like, just want you to let you know there's 4 of them, blah, blah, blah. I tried, I couldn't. Instead, it was like, come on, guys, move it.
Right.
So there was a different situation going inside the firehouse that he didn't anticipate.
Also, is it known within the community that she's African American and so is her family? Would the fire department have known that?
Well,
the fire department as a whole, I don't know if they would or they wouldn't. I know Drew Yoder, the officer who drove to the fire department, he actually kind of knew the family just because he would go to the gas station where the mother worked. So, and he was familiar with her and the girls. And, like, I don't think they were necessarily friends, but they were friendly and he knew each other. So, and there is some more context to the fire department and all of that I haven't gotten into yet.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah, well, I'll wait, Jen. You can get into
It also may be depending on what side of the neighborhood she lives that they know too.
True. Did she live in a more white neighborhood, or do you not know?
Her neighbors are white, but I think so. Just from what I've seen on articles, like the people who are talking about her, who knew her girls, they were all white.
Okay.
So it's a mixed neighborhood then.
True. Oh, but to be honest, I don't know if she's the only black person either.
Right.
Okay.
And the other thing is, okay, so I have up what Deputy Yoder said. He was breathing really heavy, and he goes, "Hey," you're gonna have to bleep this out. He goes, "Hey, we need a roll, dude. There's people inside." So that's what
definitely seems like they weren't in the biggest rush.
Yeah, that's just an assumption that I mean, we're gonna have to we're making. We don't know for sure. Yeah, because we don't know what exactly happened.
It doesn't seem like necessarily they were doing it because of race. I mean, I don't know what you're going to see, because it seems like as of right now they wouldn't have known, but it just seems like they maybe just weren't in the biggest rush. But I also don't want to like make those assumptions just yet, so I'm going to let you continue and then touch back on it later.
Yeah, okay, that sounds like a good place to start back up. Okay, so as Officer Yoder comes back to his car from, the fire, going into the fire station, you can see he's running with some sort of object in his hand. Maybe a piece of equipment he took from the fire department, which we're going to make an assumption on a little bit later. I could also hear Yoder coughing to the point where he was gagging. So he was definitely affected by the smoke when he first went in to save the girls. Because you can hear him gagging to the point where it sounds like he's almost vomiting on the dash cam. So 3:38 a.m. Yoder drove to the fire station, and now at 3:41 a.m. Officer Yoder is back at the house with Officer Dissinger, and they both retrieve air tanks, which is what I think was in his hand in the dash cam, and they prepare to re-enter the duplex themselves. At 3:42 a.m., one or both of them, we're not exactly sure, re-enter the duplex. About 9 seconds later, which is about 6 minutes after Officer Yoder first arrived at the house initially from the first time, we can see in the dash cam that a fireman in full gear is finally at the door of the duplex, but he doesn't go in. And from the video, you can see smoke at the door, but no flames. So I'm not really sure why the fireman did not go in. But about 23 seconds after Officer Yoder, or Officer Dissinger, first entered the house, someone, sounds like a man, begins screaming for help. And still no firemen go in. But at this point, now the actual firemen have to rescue not only the 4 girls, but also Officer Dissinger and Officer Yoder. Mm-hmm. Because of this, some people were not happy that these officers went in with just air packs because they think it affected the time and effort. The firemen were able to get to focus on the girls. So finally, after a minute and 19 seconds after the officers went into the house with their air tanks, a fireman in bunker gear crawls into the house through the front door, but then he walks out a few seconds later, and I have no idea why. For the next 2 minutes, this fireman is either shining his flashlight off of the porch to the ground next to the porch where there's no fire. You can see it in the dash cam, or he can be seen standing on the porch with his flashlight. Another fireman comes, and eventually at the 2-minute mark, one of the firemen begins fighting the flames. At 3:54 a.m., which is just 20 minutes after the first 911 call, 3 of the children had been brought out of the house, and by 3:55 a.m., CPR had been started. So it's pretty unbelievable to see how quickly all of this actually happened. The way the officers and the firemen handled the situation seemed to lead some people to be very angry at them, while others thought the officers were heroes. Truly, I don't know how to see the situation because, I mean, I have my opinions, but I don't want to make assumptions since there could definitely be factors that we're unaware of. But if you look at it, 20 minutes after, the 911 call happens, already, the girls are being brought out and they're dead. So this happens very quick. I do know that there is a whistleblower letter that I read that gives extra details that changes things if what the letter contains is true, but I don't want to say the allegations in case they aren't true. Even so, I wonder if there's a reason that the officers felt as though they themselves needed to go in, even though they weren't firemen. I mean, to be honest, I don't know enough about firemen and firewomen and the work they do to make a judgment, but I do want to know why the fire trucks didn't arrive sooner at the house and why they didn't enter the house quicker and fight the flames sooner. Maybe there's a legitimate reason for that. I don't know. That's why I'm not going to judge them, but I do have my questions. And I don't know if the way they were handling the fire is what made the police officers take action in the first place. I can't say, especially since there's so much politics going on here, which I will soon get into. There may be more than we are even aware of, and if what is shared in the whistleblower letter is true, it doesn't make the officers look good. So I don't know, and that's why I'm not going to share it.
So wait a second. Mm-hmm. The letter doesn't make the police officers look good or the firemen look good?
All of them, but especially all of them. And I say the police officers because if you don't see the whistleblower letter, the police officers look very good, like just from the news and from what you read. And seeing the whistleblower letter, I don't know if it changes my perceptions of the police officers because I just don't know. I think, because it's hard to know what actually happened, and I've looked at the actual police logs of the timing of everything and compared to what other people have stated actually happened. And while a lot of it is mostly consistent, there's a few details that are a little bit different from each document to document, whether it be from the police or from somebody else's take of events. It's not consistent. Some people say, and I don't know if this is true or not, but one of the things in the whistleblower letter is that when the police officers went in, the fire department was already there, had just arrived. And so they just took the air tanks and went right in. I don't know if that's true or not. But I also know, I don't know if that's true or not, right? So I don't know if they hindered their job or if they just felt like they needed to go in because they felt like nothing was happening. I don't know, and I don't want to make any assumptions or allegations.
Well, I am aware that sometimes when police departments come, they'd like to take assessment of what's going on before they run in. Like,
you mean firemen, right?
Yeah, the firemen. I'm sorry if I said police, but the firemen need to take a little bit of an assessment, like where's the fire, how to get in. I mean, they need to be safe too.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
I'm not sure if it took them a little longer than they should have. I'm not sure what was going on between the police and the fire department since they do work together. So I'm not sure what's going on, but I mean, how long did it really take them, to go in there and all that? I mean, it does take a few minutes to assess the situation. Where's the fire? Can their own people walk in without getting burned? Do they have to pour water in the house first before the fireman goes up? I mean, there are situations they got to think about. I'm not sure, though, what the failure is here. I'm not saying it wasn't. I just don't know what it is.
Yeah, because I don't want to make it they're not here to defend themselves. So maybe if I say, well, why did you wait 2 minutes to go into the house? Maybe there's a valid reason that they could then say, well, we had to make sure the structure was safe. Or
yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a valid reason for that because I can't imagine.
Excuse me, sorry.
I can't imagine. I would say there's a valid reason because I can't imagine firemen would pull up and just run inside without taking a minute or two to assess the situation because sometimes they can go in, sometimes they can't, and they have to make that decision. And I think like a minute or two is definitely understanding. But again, like I said, they're not here. I wasn't at the scene. I don't know exactly what they do, but it seems like they would take a few minutes just to assess.
Yeah, I will say, looking at the dash cam, it seemed like I was trying to figure out what the fireman was doing with the flashlight. It didn't really seem like much was happening. Maybe I'm wrong, but I was a bit confused because I was like, there's nothing really there for him to be pointing the flashlight, you know?
He was not pointing it at the house?
No, he was pointing it at the porch and at the ground next to the porch where there was just grass and it wasn't even by the fire. It was like there was nothing there. And I was like...
Unless something caught his attention.
Right, and maybe that's...
Like he saw something that looked a little suspicious.
Right.
And
Yeah.
That,
that could be it too.
Right.
So we can't really make an assumption.
Yeah.
You know, because maybe there's a valid reason for it.
Right.
I'm still wondering to this day why nobody went to the sides of the house. Nobody's mentioned that at all, so I have no idea why, you know, nobody ever went to the sides of the house to try and potentially save the girls from the windows. You know, and I do know, I think, I'm almost positive, I could be wrong, but I think firemen are instructed not to run so that it doesn't induce panic. I mean, you could further say maybe they're supposed to take things more calmly.
Also, it's hard to run in all the uniform and gear. I mean, I can't imagine.
But I will say once the fireman started to fight. Excuse me. Once the firemen started to fight the flames, it seemed that the flames went out pretty quick, and I was like, "That's a very quick solution." And you know, we've spent quite some time waiting for.
And they went in once the fire was out, or even before that.
I think it was after that.
Okay, so for some reason...
Maybe they did, just from what I could see from the dash cam, which was shining it at the house and towards the front door, you start seeing they were fighting it before they went in, and I don't know if I never saw them bring out the girls, excuse me, so I don't know if they went in when the fire was still going on. I never saw that. So I know they started doing it before they went in. I don't know if they went in and the fire was still on or not.
Oh, okay, let's just go on and see what else is going on.
Okay. I ended up watching the dash cam of Officer Yoder, who entered the house to try and save the girls. The dash cam is very distressing because you can hear Gaylin scream, so I don't recommend listening to it. Initially, the cause of the fire could not be determined because of the extent of the damage to the home. The fire was believed to have started behind a fridge in the kitchen, and canine units were brought into the house to search for possible accelerants, but none were found. Because of this, at first, no foul play was suspected, and the fire was ruled as undetermined. But Indiana State Police reclassified the fire as arson in January of 2017, so approximately 2 months after this happened, saying it was intentionally set and that the fire likely started in the kitchen. I've also heard conflicting reports about whether accelerant was found in one room or multiple parts of the home, but at some point they did find accelerant. And at that time, the Indiana Department of Homeland Security established a reward fund for information leading to an arrest in the case. Now, like I said, Flora is in Indiana, and it's located in Carroll County. Another town that's located in Carroll County is Delphi. Does that name ring a bell for either of you?
Not for me.
No. Was it supposed to?
Yes. Well, in February of 2017... 3 months after Gaylin's daughters were murdered in the house fire, 13-year-old Abigail Williams and 14-year-old Liberty German were murdered in Delphi while hiking the Monon High Bridge Trail.
I remember this now.
Okay. Yeah, Liberty German, it's very well known. Liberty German is the girl who took a video of a male suspect on the trail with him saying, "Down the hill." So these murders, the Delphi murders.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yes. It was like, it was caught on their phone, right?
Yeah, it was. Which is pretty crazy. So these murders, the Delphi murders, took place in the exact same county.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And Gaylin believes that this is why the attention shifted 3 months later away from the Flora fire to Delphi, because 2 white girls went missing and were found murdered. That's when Gaylin says the press coverage, law enforcement resources, and attention all shifted away from solving her daughter's case and went to the hunt in Delphi. Okay, to stop right here, it was so interesting to me that that we as a nation are pretty familiar with the Delphi murders at this point, but not with the Flora fire, when 4 sisters, all of Gaylin's children, were murdered in the fire. And I, of course, think it's due to press coverage being thrown to the Delphi murders because there were 2 white girls who were murdered, and then that most likely meant the resources had to follow. You know, the press coverage, there's pressure, and then resources follow. And not to say that there shouldn't be resources and press coverage put on the Delphi case, because of course there should be. You know, 2 people lost their lives. However, there should also be the same amount of coverage and resources going to the Flora fire, and at least with the press coverage. And some people maybe, I don't know how people would think of it, but some people may say there should be more wherever there's more bodies when you think. So, I mean, 4 people died instead of 2 people, you know, but more press coverage went to these 2 girls dying rather than these 4 girls dying. And there definitely wasn't even anywhere near equal coverage of them. Mm-hmm. I can tell you more went to, I can confidently tell you, and I'll tell you why, more went to the Delphi murders than it ever did to the Flora fire. And I'm talking about press coverage here. So if you search up Flora fire on YouTube, the news videos on the case have either less than a few thousand views or only a few thousand at most. And the media outlets that are covering the Flora fire are just local news outlets, for the most part. Meanwhile, the Delphi murders YouTube videos surrounding the case involve major news outlets in addition to the local news outlets, and the views are in the hundreds of thousands. And even in the local news outlets, the views are higher than they were for the Flora fire. Carroll County itself is a pretty small county, as there's only about 20,000 people living in the county. So when you think about having 6 girls get murdered in the span of 3 months, it's pretty crazy and unusual. When asked about the media comparison between Delphi and Flora, Indiana State Police Superintendent Doug Carter said, "Conducting an arson with very little information to a homicide that's developed over 80,000 tips, it's an analogy. Unfair comparison between the two. We can't make people talk to us." When Gaylin was asked if she thought if 4 white girls had died in a fire, if the investigation would have been handled differently, she said, yes, of course. They would have put more time into it. They wouldn't have just done an initial investigation and then boom, that's it, they're done. It went so fast. In 3 to 6 months, they had all the answers. I just don't believe it. She said she thought it moved too fast and that they jumped to their own conclusions without stopping and thinking. And when asked why she thought that, Gaylin responded, "I'm black, to be honest with you." So, you know,
Yeah.
what are you guys both thinking right now after everything I just shared?
Well, I mean, we went through another story and they had made their conclusion and, you know, race was not a part of it. So I do think there's something there that the law officers and the law department and the police departments there appear to make quick decisions on quite a few stories. You know, that's, I think, what I'm seeing that's consistent from many stories that we're covering. And I don't think race always plays a part with them. I'm not saying it doesn't, but I don't think it's always that. I just think it's just their own theories that they put into a story. They want to finish the investigation quickly, and they have their story, and, you know, they wrap it with a nice little bow, and they're done.
But I think unconsciously they may make those decisions.
Yeah.
You know, like you may not say, "Oh, I'm consciously going to focus more on these 2 the Delphi murders versus Flora fire." It could be very unconscious too.
They just care less about them.
You're saying police in general, not just, you're not saying specifically this department, just like police in general.
I mean, yeah, I would say not like.
We don't want to like generalize.
Well, no, no, I just think it does happen. I don't think like all police officers do it. I just think it does happen, and it definitely could have happened with this case. I mean, I don't want to make any assumptions, but to me, I feel like if this was 4 white girls, we probably would have seen them focus a lot more on finding whoever did this and whoever's, you know, the culprit, but we don't also know for sure.
Well, I found it interesting that they started the investigation, they brought dogs in, they didn't find anything, and then I have to give them credit, they went back and looked at it through again and did
I will
find something.
say that's something
so there is some credit to them that they didn't just say, okay, nothing, and close it and all that.
Yeah, usually you see them just say, "Oh, it was an accident," and move on.
Well, and I didn't want to include this in there right again because it's an allegation, but the Gaylin and her attorneys might have been behind them, or mostly behind them, returning to the house to do a check. Actually, because she hired an independent prior investigator, and again, I don't want to make any assumptions or allegations here, but most likely him emailing them and emailing multiple officials and saying, "This is what I found. Somebody needs to." And I'm not sure if it was him who emailed them, this private investigator, or somebody else from somebody else. But somebody did email saying this needs to be looked at again. I'm almost positive.
So they
without saying
so
too many
they went
allegations.
in supposedly even with dogs and didn't find anything, and then obviously a private investigator found something, and then they went in to recheck and found something. That's a little suspicious.
Mm-hmm.
How do you not find something and then find something?
Right. That's the thing, is that she had attorneys who went in to, the private investigator, and I don't understand why he was able to find evidence and the previous team was not able to.
Well, I mean, I don't think she had them like put anything there or anything like that, but I think maybe it's like, maybe they cared more and they paid more attention, I mean,
Once she made a big deal out of it, you're saying?
Yeah, like when she was like, which she has every right to. I mean, there's
right.
4 kids, it's her whole life. And then, so they had people in there who cared probably a little bit more and, kind of already was maybe suspicious. So they were kind of looking for things a little bit more and found it. And they were like, hey, like, you need to look at this. And coming from the attorneys, maybe they're like, okay, fine, like, we'll go back. And then they found something.
Were the bedrooms over the kitchen? Because it just seems the fire, where was the mom's room near the kitchen?
Actually, let me bring that up because
it just seems
there's a site that shows a whole map of it. There's a site, and I'll get into it, that shows quite a lot.
I'm just interested. It's interesting because the fire took off, and I can see if the bedrooms were above the kitchen. That if the fire started there, I could escalate and go up and all that. But where was the mom's room? Because she had the opportunity to come out. So I'm assuming that their rooms were over the kitchen because, if the fire started there and then, everything rises from the kitchen, it'd probably go faster that way.
Right. And that's why she couldn't.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking. I'm just curious. It's not the end all do all here.
But yeah, it makes sense. And also, like, maybe the person knew that too. And if they were trying to, like, get, like, as high as a body count as they could.
And I do want to say one of the reasons why I did not necessarily mention this email initially is because I was not able to. It's blocked out who emails in the. Okay, there's this website that I'll go into. It's called Flora. It's called flora-boar.org, and it has a whole bunch of like documents, just talking about the investigation and trying to get this thing solved. And I'm not sure who it's run by, but it looks like it's trying to be as accurate and informational as possible. That's where the whistleblower documents are. That's where the different depositions are, all of that. But because the email didn't explicitly say who emailed, the different officials to tell them to revisit the investigation, I didn't want to make the assumption, but just from what I've gathered, it seems like it's probably the fire investigator who emailed them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, like, the whole email thing is necessarily, like, a bad thing. I just think that means that maybe the initial investigators weren't as careful. Or maybe it was also right after the fire, so maybe it was harder for them to see things, and they needed time for, like, everything to settle and to go back. And sometimes just a fresh pair of eyes just really helps, so I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing, that with the email and everything.
Well, the more we get into this case, your opinion might change.
Okay, let's go.
Okay. Now let's dig a little deeper into the investigation itself, which involves a lot of politics, unfortunately. And I'll be honest, there is just not as much investigative evidence to share as you all would have liked. But that doesn't mean there's nothing, because we do have some interesting things, some of which I'll cover now and some of which I'll get into later. In June of 2017, after being pressed from the media, Indiana State Police said they were questioning persons of interest in the investigation, but did not have any suspects in the case. Less than 2 weeks later, June 23rd, 2017, Dennis Randall, the Indiana Department of Homeland Security fire investigator assigned to the Flora fire case, resigned after questions came up surrounding the specific details of the arson ruling. This would be the first of a few resignations that some believe are tied to the handling of this case. On October 26, 2017, the NAACP joined the family of the girls at a press conference to announce they would also be joining the investigation. In case anyone isn't familiar with the NAACP, it's a civil rights organization that stands for National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Barbara Bowling, or maybe Bowling, I could be wrong, who is a member of the NAACP National Board of Directors, said the NAACP is just getting involved, but based on information we have, it appears the investigation has been bungled in some kind of way. There are people out there who know, and it smells. I know we're just getting started here, but it smells of a cover-up. Indiana State Police held a press conference later that same day to address the NAACP's comments and concerns. Indiana State Police Superintendent Doug Carter, who we mentioned before because he was commenting on questions surrounding the differences in the Delphi and Flora investigations, he said, even the notion that there would be even the perception of a cover-up in regard to an investigation involving our little girls is not only unsubstantiated, but strikes me at the core of who I am and the agency I represent. I'd give my life to find out who killed those little girls. Then, on November 11th, 2017, nearly a year after the deadly fire, Carroll County Prosecutor Robert Ives announced he would be stepping down from his position at the end of the year, leaving one of Carroll County's biggest cases unsolved. Just days later, on November 14th, Flora Fire Chief Adam Randall resigned from his position. So you've now got 3 people connected to this case who have resigned in a half-year period. In December of 2017, Indiana State Police requested a peer review of the investigation from the Indianapolis Fire Department. The peer review by Indianapolis Fire Department examined witness reports of people present at the time of the fire, including firefighters, police, and witnesses. Members of an Indianapolis Fire Department fire investigation section also conducted a physical examination of the scene in Flora. They released their findings on January 31st, 2018, confirming that the fire was intentionally set. Currently, officials have not released information about any suspects. They say they are no longer speaking publicly about the case, and it still remains under investigation. And right now, we are going to pause and continue the rest of this in part 2. Part 2, there is going to be a lot of unexpected connections between a lot of the things and people we just discussed. It's going to make you question everything a little bit more, and it's just going to be wild, to say the least. So definitely come along for part 2. And before we end this, I just want to say we did look real quick and we confirmed you can also send us a text through Apple Podcasts as well if you want to send a case suggestion. But with that, do you guys have anything else before we wrap it up?
Nope.
No, I just really appreciate everyone tuning in.
Yes, thank you so much for everyone for listening to part 1 of the Gaylin Rose episode. I really hope that by covering this case, we can get some sort of closure and justice for Gaylin and her girl. So stay tuned for part 2, and please share this with anyone who you know cares about justice and true crime, or anyone at all who you think could help get this case going. Thank you, and we hope you stay on the airy side.
Thank you. See you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.